Welcome back to At the Hill on the Rocket Productions Network. I'm your host, Cerenity Cundell. Addison, Scanland, and Jonathan Moore will join me shortly. If you have missed any episodes of At the Hill, go find the Rocket Productions Network on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, or any place you listen to your podcasts. All of our episodes are also on the Rocket Productions YouTube channel. If you are not a subscriber, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. Be sure to check out our Rocket Production on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Let's get into it. Today our guest is Mr. Browning of Rocket Productions. Browning, why did we change our format?
Well, first off, it's kind of interesting being on my own podcast, but whatever, it's fine. It's kind of weird, but here we are anyways. I get bored. First and foremost, I get bored really easy. We've been doing the Wake Up Rose Hill, Channel 7 News previously. We've been doing that for a while. I've been here, this is my 8th year. We've been doing that since my 2nd year. So it got to the point where I want something different, frankly. And any more podcasts it's the thing. People listen to podcasts, whether it's a news podcast or mystery podcast or sports podcast. People are listening to podcasts. And we live in a world now where attention spans are very short. And I could tell based on the amount of people that were watching our broadcast shows, which were not many towards the end, that people need something shorter and that they can multitask. They can, do things around the house while listening to a podcast, or they can, work on homework while listening to a podcast, whatever. And so I thought, okay, let's make a 10 to 15 minute podcast or multiple podcasts and see how that goes. It gives you guys the chance to try a new format, a new medium in journalism, broadcast journalism. And so far, I was telling you guys before we started recording, we're getting decent numbers. We've had averaging about 80 downloads per week, which is really good, I feel like. So it was a combination, Serenity. It was a combination of me being bored, me wanting to get more exposure for you guys, and then I think also adjusting to what is now 21st century broadcast journalism.
For sure.
And how do you think that transition from like a news-based, mostly video style, to an audio is going?
I think it's going well. Not just the downloads, but also I think, you guys, the staff, even though this is your first time hosting a podcast, I think the breath of fresh air has been kind of nice. We have new people on staff this year as well that have kind of embraced this. And we still do the video format to things, but I think people want to do what's new, what's cool, what's up to date. And I think, Jonathan here, I think he was one of the reasons we had this discussion last spring about, trying podcasts out. And we were fortunate that between myself, Mr. Hill, Mrs. Evans, and a few more teachers, every 4 or 5 years, there's a rotation of who gets some extra money to buy things for the program, and it was our turn. And fortunately, we were able to get this really nice podcast equipment, and, I can't be more pleased with how it's going so far, and I hope that you all feel the same way, and not just you guys that are on staff here, but the people who support Rocket Productions as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So you said you've been doing news for a while, and you want to switch over to podcasting. When did you see the numbers dropping from broadcast?
That's a great question. Early on when we did Wake Up Rose Hill, and we first called it Channel 7 News, we had great numbers, in my opinion. We were in the hundreds, 300, 400, 500. And then, I'm not saying COVID was the reason why, but after we had that time that, when we shut down, that had been in March of 2020, and then the following year, it was such a unique school year because we were online sometimes. I mean, it was a hodgepodge, a mismatch of all sorts of different people in the class. We had people who decided to be online only that year who were in our broadcast class. And really, Jonathan, the quality of work, it suffered. I think how you guys see, I have to have trust with people and doing prominent roles. And that year, I was forcing so many people into doing jobs they'd never done before. We were doing shows like, when we did our broadcast show last year, we had everybody in the room and we had people in the studio or in the behind the scenes and stuff. That year was we record something, just me and another person wearing masks. We go into the editing room, edit the show, come back and do it again, and the product suffered. So I would say 2020, 2021 is when I saw that, okay, this isn't great. And then the year after that, which would have been 2 years ago, it was okay because we had a decent group of seniors, And then last year we had a really small senior class, and the numbers really dropped off dramatically. So I think that was part of the reasoning for moving the podcast.
So really quick follow-up question.
Sure.
So when viewers drop, the quality of students drop too.
It seemed to be that there were parallels, yeah. And I'm not. That's not to say those kids didn't try hard, because they did, But I had kids that year, 2020, 2021, that had never taken any of my classes before, had never been in front of a camera before. But I'm like, listen, you got to do this. You might not feel comfortable with it. You might not want to do it, but you got to. It'd be like the people who asked to be behind the scenes before the school year this year on our podcast. Nope, you got to be in front of a camera, and it was hard. So yeah, I think those you can connect some dots there. I do.
And especially with COVID, and they didn't really get the full experience of being in front of a camera.
Correct. It wasn't a live show, so really, what we do is, Addison, we'd record. If you were to read an introductory to a story for Wake Up Rose Hill, we'd record that, stop, go put that on OBS, go put that on iMovie. Serenity would come in, she read her part, we record that, put that on iMovie. So there was no
Yeah.
news show simulation. It was just we record it, go do it, because we had rules that we couldn't have more than so many people in a closed room like this. We the people who were on camera, they got to take their mask off. Everybody else had to wear a mask, and then after you leave, you put the mask back on. It was just, it was the best situation of a poor situation, if that makes any sense. We tried to do the best we could, and it wasn't easy, but it is what it is.
So, Browning, that leads me to my next question. What would you do, and I know this is a sucky question to ask, but with how it is in the pandemic, you were mentioning the pandemic, what would you do if something like that were to come back? How do you think?
Oh boy!
How do you think the podcast itself would do with that?
Well, the good thing with a podcast is that while we have these great mics and this great equipment, there are ways, perhaps, around it. So many podcasts now, and some of the ones that I showed you guys before the school year started, are done via Zoom. One person might be in New York, the other person might be in California, and they just do a Zoom call and they use audio for that. So that would be what we'd probably do. It would be, knock on wood, and God forbid, if it would ever come to something like that again, I think we could make it work way better than we would if it was a in-person
Honestly,
broadcast
I think so
show.
too. I think this is a good new format.
And do you think that this transition will be more successful in the long run, switching to podcasts from news-based?
Evidence would suggest yes, because I don't know about you guys, and I'm twice as old as you guys are, but I have podcasts on when I'm mowing the yard, when I'm doing laundry, whatever. Podcasts are always on for me. So now this gives people a chance to go mow the yard and turn on.
To be able to tune in.
Correct. Yeah. Go listen to the At the Hill podcast, or go listen to the Rocket Sports podcast, or whatever. People can do multiple things at one time. Or for example, if Mr. Barton during his plan period can have it on his computer and listen to it. Mm-hmm. And while he's grading art, or and Miss Arbogast is while she's grading papers, whatever, you can do two things at once. Whereas with the news show, it's video. You have to sit down and you have to watch it. You can't just have it on the background because you might be missing key components to it. Whereas a podcast, you're hearing everything that needs to be that you want to hear, right? And it's not you have to focus solely on watching a screen.
So you said you were doing 8 years, 2 years before that. There was in my view, generations. The first year was, what did you do?
First year was what they did for the guy that was here before I was. It was rough, but anyway, it wasn't good. But that led to the change. I think that's a good point. It has been generations.
So the podcast has become a new generation, and I see now this as an ever-changing class. It's never confirmed what this is, and this has become. I talked to you last year about podcast, and we've changed. We adapt. And I think that we can now see this class as the students have the voice in this. They can talk to you and come up with stuff and work with you.
It's interesting you say that because from my first year here to the second year here, we started a news show, not because I wanted to, but two students suggested it. We took a field trip to Channel 12, KWCH Channel 12, and that idea clicked. So I think you're right. I'm never going to be one that doesn't listen to ideas because I'm not in high school. I don't know what kids want to consume. I don't know what interests kids in terms of journalism. So yeah, I'm always open to ideas, and I think that's what makes these elective classes like mine or Mr. Barton's or Mr. Hill's unique in that, suggestions are always welcomed. We always want to know what can we do to A, make it more enjoyable for you guys, and B, make it so that more people in not just the high school or the district or in the community want to support us. And that's a good point. That's a really good point.
So now you can say that students that are interested in this class but just see this as just, a broadcast, they should now see it more as a way to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Voice.
Yeah. And, so, like, for example, two of the podcasts that we have, Hayden Soap's podcast and then the On the Clock podcast, those were their ideas. That wasn't me coming up with anything. So if you were to come up to me tomorrow and say, hey, listen, Browning, I have this idea about a new podcast. I'd like to host it. Let's do it. I mean, I'm never going to turn away ideas, within reason, of course. I'm never going to turn away ideas that if kids want to express their creativity in a way, I'm all for it.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you, Browning, for coming on here.
Yeah, my schedule was really booked. I worked this in my schedule for you guys.
Thank you for watching and listening to At the Hill on the Rocket Productions Network. Remember to subscribe to the Rocket Productions Network on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, or any place you listen to podcasts. If you are not already a subscriber to Rocket Productions on YouTube, please subscribe. For all of today's hosts and guests, I'm Cerenity Cundell. See you next time.